Cyclone Megan has intensified further this morning. The storm now just under a Category 4 for the Australian region, with maximum sustained winds right now of 110 miles per hour and gusts of 130 miles per hour. That would be a Category 2 hurricane equivalent. Right now, the storm is a high-end Category 3 on the Australian region's scale, which, when it comes to storms in the Australian region and the southern hemisphere, is what we use to identify what category a cyclone is. The hurricane/typhoon equivalent is used in the northern hemisphere. As you can quite clearly see on satellite imagery, the storm still hasn't developed an eye wall structure yet, nor will it probably ever do so, considering there has been some extensive land interaction over the past 24 hours with the storms as the storm moves closer to land. Also, lots of smaller islands as well that are just off those shorelines, which is also resulting in more land interaction with the storm. So that's why it hasn't really gotten an eye yet. I don't think it will get one, as I've said, but if it does get one, it'll probably be very, very poorly defined. So, quite clearly, despite the fact that we don't have an eye, the swirl of the storm is quite obvious. The size of the storm is rather compact, though. The winds are packed in to a very small area within the storm right now. However, the storm's thunderstorm and cloud influence is rather extensive. The storm's cloud cover does extend quite far out, a few hundred miles from the center. Very impressive storm indeed. Here on to infrared imagery. As you can see, cloud top temperatures nearly negative 100 degrees Celsius right now. Quite clearly, you can see that there is, according to infrared imagery, there is a bit of a dip in the center that appears to be evident. That actually could be the beginning of an eye wall structure, but if it is, it is really, really poor. I don't see this becoming much, but the high cloud tops in this storm being negative 100 degrees Celsius cloud top temperatures. That shows that this storm, even without its eye, is extremely powerful and is not to be underestimated. Recent forecast models have shown that you can quite clearly see on this forecast here. Now, this uses the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale for the tracks, the CIM SS. But here is your Category 2 hurricane equivalent storm. It looks like they do expect that it will intensify a little bit more before landfall, and then weaken slightly before landfall. As you can see, dropping from a Category 2 hurricane equivalent to a Category 1 at the time. Right here with winds of 65 knots. So it's going to be... That's the good news. The storm's intensity is going to drop slightly. In terms of wind shear, as soon as I get to the map... There we go. Sorry about that. So this is the storm on the right here. There we go. As you can see on the right here, wind shear is also a factor as well right now. There is 40 knot wind shear above the storm right now, which is also probably another reason why that eye hasn't formed. The storm is fighting some high wind shear. It's very impressive, though, that despite the high wind shear, the storm has manage to steadily intensify into a Category 2 hurricane equivalent, a Category 3 cyclone. And right now, the storm is probably peaking. Right now, peaking intensity. We do expect a landfall to occur later tonight or tomorrow morning. Looks like landfall time would probably be around 8 a.m. So a little bit later landfall time is forecasted. So doesn't look like it's going to be 2 a.m. anymore. That is American time anyway. But it should be 8 a.m. in 8 a.m. the morning of Monday the 18th. That's tomorrow. That would probably be late in the day for Australia's time. I don't exactly know what time it will be in Australia, but it will be late day, probably. So we're going to keep a very close eye on this. Sea surface temperatures under the storm right now, as soon as I reload the map. Okay, it's already updated. Never mind. As you can quite clearly see, around 30 to 32 degrees Celsius right now. Means the storm still has sufficient water temperatures to result in further intensification, but with the wind shear and the increasing land interaction, I do not believe that the storm is going to get that much more intensity before it takes that weakening phase before landfall tomorrow morning. But it's not out of the question that the storm could gain 10 to 15 more miles per hour and become a Category 4. But if it does become a Category 4, it will be brief. Nevertheless, this storm is going to bring destructive winds and extreme rainfall to the entire southern Gulf of Carpentaria coastline, and this storm should not be underestimated. We will be back later this afternoon with another update.